There are two kinds of people in this world. The people who think there are two kinds of people and the other people. And some people would see Mary and Martha as simplistic as this. You're either a Mary or you're a Martha. Although I've never heard anyone claim to be a Mary. Everyone says, oh, I'm such a Martha. And they proudly proclaim, I'm that kind of person. I'm the Martha. Or you say, that person, that's a real Martha we have there. Never, well, there's a real Mary. That's someone who's doing what Jesus seems to have preferred. Even people who aren't that versed in the Bible or Christianity seem to know who Mary and Martha are. They know that difference between those two things, being Mary or being a Martha. And it's not that they weren't real people, that there weren't real people named Mary and Martha, but we know that they are also a symbol for us. There are times when we are doing the better thing, and there are times when we're not. This story isn't telling us all to be lazy, or that being a good host or seeing what needs to be done and doing it are the wrong path. That's not Jesus beating up on Martha for doing good things. Sometimes we look at this and we wonder what the fuller context would be. What's the story between Mary and Martha? Did they fight a lot as kids? There's no mother or father here. It's the house of Martha and her sister Mary. Maybe they grew up always having problems with this issue. Perhaps day after day, Martha works at 2 jobs, and she comes home only to find Mary just sitting around playing Xbox all day while the garbage is piled up and there's a stink coming from the sink and the refrigerator. Maybe they finally reached an agreement about sharing the chores after years of horrible infighting and arguments. And now when the most important guest they've ever had shows up under their roof, Mary wigs out and doesn't lift a finger to help. Maybe it's the last straw for Martha and she just can't stand it. Whole bunch of possibilities between Mary and Martha. We tend to identify with Martha, I think. And that's okay. We try to convince ourselves we don't because clearly Jesus says Mary has made the better choice, but when we are true to ourselves, we are a little upset by the whole story because it's unfair, right? It's unfair. Just like the parable with the older brother and the prodigal one. You know that story? The older brother says, wait a minute, I've been here the whole time, and that other brother, he just wandered off, spent all the money, came back, and you're having a party for him. It's not fair. And we who read the parable say, yeah, you know what, that's not fair. I don't like that at all. Just like the parable about the workers who work all day through the toil through the heat, and they get the same pay as the guys who came at the last minute. That parable, we say, that's not fair. And when we read it, we agree, that's not fair at all. But here's the thing. Those parables aren't about parity between brothers or co-workers. Not even close. Just like this story is not about the relationship between Mary and Martha. It's about the relationship they have with Jesus. For that matter, it's about the relationship we have with Jesus. Ask yourself, what sort of relationship would you have with Jesus? Or better still, what sort of relationship would Jesus want to have with you? Here we have a picture of Mary sitting at Jesus' feet. I hope that didn't pass you by too quickly. That sitting at Jesus' feet, listening to him, that is the official pose of the disciple. The Bible doesn't tend to use the word disciple for women, take that as it is, but this is the pose of the disciple. Just like the man who is cured of legion, the demoniacs, and they're all thrown into the pigs, they jump off the cliff. When the villagers find him, they find him sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening to him. The disciples' pose. That's where we find ourselves. That's what Mary is doing, sitting there, listening at the feet of Jesus. course, a disciple is a follower, a learner. Sometimes in education we miss the boat just as Martha seems to have missed the boat. Because the way we look at education is often one thing leading to another, right? Here in Fairfax County, I understand if you don't get into the right preschool, the rest of your career you might as well just give up. Get into the right preschool, because if you don't, then kindergarten's basically shot. And we all know kindergarten prepares you for elementary school. In elementary school, you got to get into the right one there too, because elementary school prepares you for middle school, and middle school, of course, prepares you for high school, and high school prepares you for college. College prepares you for graduate school, and graduate school prepares you for doctorate, and eventually you ask yourself the question, when do I arrive? I keep leading to the next thing. When am I there? That's not the best way to look at education, although we fall into that trap. When do we forget about leading to the next thing, and when do we enjoy being where we are, learning? One of my favorite learnings as I started on my Christian path were C.S. Lewis's The Screw Tape Letters. If you've never had a chance, go back and read them. They're a lot of fun. It takes a little understanding, though, so excuse me for this. The Screw Tape Letters are reportedly the letters of a senior demon writing to his nephew, a junior demon, who is doing his best to screw up the life of a human. So it's full of advice, full of ideas of how to really get that human off track. We don't have the responses from the nephew, we only have one-way letters. And here's from the 15th chapter, or the 15th letter, from Screwtape to his nephew. The humans live in time, but our enemy, read God here, destines them to eternity. He therefore, I believe, wants them to attend chiefly to two things: to eternity itself, and to that point of time which they call the present. For the present is the point at which time touches eternity. Of the present moment, and of it only, humans have an experience analogous to the experience which our enemy has of reality as a whole. In the present alone, freedom and actuality are offered them. He would therefore have them continually concerned either with eternity, which means being concerned with him, or with the present, either meditating on their eternal union with or separation from himself, or else obeying the present voice of conscience, bearing the present cross, receiving the present grace, giving thanks for the present pleasure. I see Mary and Martha there. Are you present? Do you see God's presence? Are you sitting there listening? Or are you busy and distracted by many tasks? Screwtape goes on. Our business is to get them away from the eternal and from the present. With this in view, we sometimes tempt a human, say a widow or a scholar, to live in the past. But this is of limited value, for they have some real knowledge of the past, and it has a determinate nature, and to that extent resembles eternity. It is far better to make them live in the future. Biological necessity makes all their passions point in that direction already, so that thought about the future inflames hope and fear. Also, it is unknown to them, so that in making them think about it, we make them think of unrealities. In a word, the future is, of all things, the thing least like eternity. It is the most completely temporal part of time. For the past is frozen and no longer flows, and the present is all lit up with eternal rays. Hence, nearly all vices are rooted in the future. Gratitude looks to the past, love to the present. Fear, avarice, lust, and ambition look ahead. So the question for us then is, if the present is all lit up with eternal rays, why would we want to be anywhere else? If you prefer, here's how Lao Tzu puts it. If you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present. So that brings us back to Mary, that disciple pose, sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening. Do we want to sit at the feet of Jesus as disciples, or are we going to get caught up with task-oriented Christianity? I will tell you, priests above all are really bad at this. There's a lot of work to be done. There's stuff on my to-do list that never seems to get crossed off. There are emails, there are liturgies to prepare, and even in the midst of getting everything ready to worship God, we can get busy about the taskiness of it all. It's as if Jesus is saying to all of us, I'm not as concerned about getting things done for the church as I am with how you are with me. Because in the end, that is the work of the church. To sit at the feet of Jesus as disciples, to be loved by God and to know it, to accept it, to taste it. We don't act in the world so that we can be loved by God. We acknowledge that we are loved by God, the miracle and the awe and the inconceivable truth of the fullness of that love which we haven't and could never earn. And we are inspired and empowered to act in the world because of it. Screwtape says, he therefore, I believe, wants them to attend chiefly to two things, to eternity to itself and to that point of time which they call the present. He would have them continually concerned either with the eternity, which means being concerned with him, or with the present, either meditating on their eternal union with or separation from himself, or else obeying the present voice of conscience, bearing the present cross, receiving the present grace, giving thanks for the present pleasure. Ultimately, the gospel story this morning is not about the relationship between Mary and Martha. It's about the relationship they have with Jesus, the relationship we have with Jesus. Does Jesus want a minion or a disciple? It's not about the work. It's about presence. The story of Mary and Martha is ultimately remembered in our Bible because it is relevant to all readers and hearers and seekers throughout all generations, to you and to me. What sort of relationship would you have with Jesus? What sort of relationship would Jesus have with you? The story of Mary and Martha is about us living fully into this very moment of closeness with God, attending to our relationship to God. Choose the better part. It will never be taken away from you.